Let me welcome everyone to this NIST-sponsored virtual career fair for non-clinical biostatistics, sometimes referred to as preclinical biostatistics. We have a panel of experienced statisticians from the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm pleased to have them with us today. As you can see, we're using Zoom webinar software, so all the attendees are muted. However, they can ask questions using the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screen. And if you wish, you can raise your hand and we'll unmute you or ask you to unmute yourself so you can ask a question, especially during the Q&A at the end. I'm Jim Rosenberger, Director of the National Institute of Statistical Sciences, NIST. And along with Glenn Johnson, also at NIST, we will be hosting this career fair for the benefit of our NIST affiliates. We have over 45 affiliates, mostly academic, but also 6 government affiliates and 5 industry affiliates, and would welcome additional pharmaceutical companies to join us. I will now invite Tom Bradstreet to introduce the panel. Tom is the Director of Preclinical Biomarkers and Discovery Research at Bristol Myers Squibb for the past 7 years, and prior to that worked at Merck for 32 years. Tom, I'll turn this over to you. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and take it away.
Tom, you're muted. I was behaving. Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to this session of the NIST series. Thank Jim and Glenn for inviting us. We're very much looking forward to discussing non-clinical statistics with students this morning. Olu, Fanny, Jiming, Wei, and myself comprise an outreach initiative from the non-clinical statistics part of the biopharm section of the American Statistical Association. What we're going to do today is introduce some of the opportunities in this area. And we're going to highlight a conference which you can attend as students, which is coming up shortly in June. Olu will start with the presentation, and Fanny will be our moderator. At the end of the presentation, we have plenty of time for questions, so feel free to ask. During the presentation, if you have a question which you think is for clarification, please feel free to ask. If it's a question that might require an extended response, we'll probably defer that to the end. So I'd like to get started now, and I'll turn this over to Olu, who will give the presentation. And thank you again for attending.
Thank you, Tom. My name is Olivia Mariner, and today I will be talking about the non-clinical statisticians. You could see my video. I will be turning that off during my presentation so as not to interfere with my bandwidth. And so today I would do 3 things, and one of the 3 things is to give you an overview of drug discovery and drug development. The other one is to give you an overview of non-clinical statistics. And the third one will be to tell you what non-clinical statisticians do in the industry. And if you're interested, how you could prepare to be one. So let's start with the overview of drug discovery and drug development. So everyone on this panel is from a pharmaceutical company, and they do help bring out new medicines. However, the road to new medicines is not a very straightforward one. It's the one that has a lot of detours, that has a lot of studies in it. And the reason why there's a lot of projects and studies from discovery to full development, and ultimately the goal is to get it to FDA approval, is because it takes a lot to make a medicine. It takes a lot to make a drug, and I will summarize and show you what it takes to make a drug from an idea. To begin with, let's talk about the definition of a drug. Well, according to the regulatory industry, FDA, a drug is a substance that facilitates, diagnose, cure or mitigate or treat or prevent a disease. And you could look at it as a substance that alleviates a condition, a disease, or a symptoms. In some cases, it could also be a medical device, which could be something like insulin injections or even contact lenses. Those are also medications. They are referred to as drug with respect to FDA. And it could also be cosmeticals. The other thing I want to introduce is the different or the various kind of drugs, which include what's called a small molecule, what's called a large molecule, and what's called a gene therapy. So a small molecule is usually a chemical compound that have small molecular weight, which is where the name comes from. And they're often produced by chemical synthesization. And they are administered in form of tablets. So when you think of small molecule, you think of tablets. Now, large molecules are proteins that have big molecular weight, and that's why they are called large molecules. But they are produced either using cell cultures or DNA technology, and they're usually in form of liquid format, and they are administered through injections. So injections, you could think of them as large molecules. And then the third one is gene therapy, which uses reprogrammed cells, genes, or tissues to treat or prevent disease. And this could be human cells or animal cells. And that's the new one, which is gene therapy. So I want to ask a question. Based on this, what do you think the classification of COVID-19 will be? I know you can probably talk right now, but you could put it in the chat and I could see that. Thank you. In the chat, there is large molecule, and that's very correct. Large molecule will be the classification for COVID-19. So let's talk about the drug discovery and development process. So there are 5 main stages of the drug discovery and development process. It starts from discovery to preclinical research, to clinical development, FDA review, and post-marketing monitoring. The discovery and development itself is to research for a new drug, which begins usually in the laboratory or having an idea of a compound. The preclinical research drug is where the drugs undergo laboratory or animal testing to answer questions about the safety and the efficacy of the drugs. The clinical development involves the drugs being tested on people to make sure they are safe and effective. Then it moves to FDA review, which thoroughly examine all the data and related information submitted by the drug company or the device and decide whether to approve it or not. So after that, there's what it's called post-marketing monitoring. And what that does is just to monitor the drug and the device to make sure that they're safe and there's no adverse event for public use. So how do we start all this medicine? It's a lot of potential candidates in the beginning during the drug development process. And a lot of them do fail safety and efficacy more than often. When you see one drug that's been approved, you could be sure that it's over 1,000 of them that probably fail safety and efficacy at the beginning. And more than often, this happens a lot, just for you to know. The next thing I want to talk about is the cost and timeline. So from the drug discovery process through the FDA approval, it usually takes like 10 to 14 years, depending on the kind of drug, and usually cost an average between 1.3 billion to 2.6 billion. These also include some of those drugs or potential medicine that do not make it to clinical trials, or they don't even make it to FDA approval. And as you could see, the more you learn about the drug as the year progresses, your level of knowledge of the drug improves. And as you can see in the visualization, as the year progresses in time, your level of knowledge improves as you move from preclinical studies to clinical studies to FDA approval and post-marketing monitoring. So let's break down what I just summarized in the beginning about the drug discovery and development process. And the reason I want to break this down is that you have to understand this to understand where non-clinical statistics comes to play. So once a drug is discovered, the next stage is to identify what's called the active pharmaceutical ingredients. That will be the target identification, and that target needs to be validated. Once the target is identified, it goes through assay development and assay screening. And this is all the early drug discovery process. And once that is done, it goes to the preclinical studies. The preclinical studies test the drug or the potential medicine on small animals to discover benefits. And, some of the tests they do include in vivo, in vitro, and ex vivo assays, which I will talk about in a couple of slides. There's the ADME, and there's the proof of concept. I'm going to talk about those acronym also. They also want to look at the formulation and the bioactivity and how can they dose these drugs in human and in animals. And at this process, the API, which is the active pharmaceutical ingredients, gets a classification from the FDA that makes it to a potential drug candidate. So the IND application is just the investigative new drug application because it's still potential. Afterwards, it goes into the clinical development where it moves through various phases of clinical trials. The clinical development is a stage where the potential drug is now tested in humans. And when it's tested in humans, they want to look for the safety, they want to look for the efficacy of the drug, how the drug is being absorbed, and if it actually has any adverse events on any organs in the humans. And they also want to look at the maximum effective dose. After the clinical development is done, it then goes to FDA review where they examine all the data and they decide to approve or not to approve. If you've noticed, for COVID-19 vaccines, whether it's Pfizer or J&J or Moderna or AstraZeneca, all of them were given an emergency authorized use, not a full FDA approval. And that's because, well, we're in a pandemic and things need to speed up. So during the FDA review, usually they file what's called new drug application, which is the NDA, or they file what's called, if it's a large molecule biology license application, which is BLA. And just like I explained before, it could take 10 to 15 years. It depends of a 20-year patent cycle for a drug to achieve approval. And so what happens in post-market monitoring is that FDA reviews what's going on with the public use and see if there's an adverse effect, things that they need to report. And in some cases, if it's as like a very bad adverse effect, they could actually pull the drug from approval. So that's the end of my overview of drug discovery and drug development process. I will now proceed to my overview of non-clinical statistics. Now, in the pharmaceutical world, you have biostatisticians, and in biostatisticians, you have the biostatisticians that work in the clinical development, also called clinical biostatisticians or clinical statistics, and you have the ones that work in non-clinical side of the biostatistics, and they do discovery, safety, toxicology, CMC, and data science. So I'm going to go through what non-clinical statistics is. Now, the last slide I showed you was to give you an overview of drug discovery and development process. Now, non-clinical statistics spans the whole drug discovery and development process, from the early drug discovery to the preclinical studies, to clinical development, to FDA review, and to post-marketing monitoring. And what do they do? What they do involves drug discovery, safety and toxicology, chemistry, manufacturing and control, which is CMC, and data science. So I'll give you an overview of each one of these and how non-clinical statistics works with them. So for drug discovery, the goal is to identify the lead target. So after the lead target is discovered, then they move on to what's called target validation, which you eliminate all the wrong targets. Afterwards, we identify the lead compound and the target, and we move to preclinical development. In the preclinical development stage, what we look for is to analyze the bioactivity of the potential drug, the safety and the efficacy of the formulated drug substance. And during these stages where you plan for the investigative new drug application. And usually in the preclinical stage, you test this on animals. Animals could include monkey, pig, rat, mice. And what you're looking for is to make sure that the drug is safe and effective. So the drug discovery stage usually involves bioinformatics, assay development, structural biology, animal studies. There are dosing and biomarkers, and even pharmacokinetics. And these are the specialties that statisticians work with. Now, for the safety and toxicology, once a lead compound is found and we begin the preclinical research, the safety and toxicology determines what's called the ADME. The ADME is the absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion information of measuring the way the new drug or the new potential drug affects the body. The potential benefits and mechanism of actions. It's also under safety and toxicology. Sometimes it's called proof of concept or proof of principle. They also look for the best dosage or the maximum effective dose as defined as the highest dose tolerated in the toxicology studies. And they also want to make sure that those are not affecting human organs. They look at the way the drug is administered, the way the drug is delivered into the body, if it's oral or if it's a cream or patch or patches, or if it's injections. COVID-19s are delivered through injections. They also look at the side effects. That's the work of safety and toxicology. They do look at interaction with other treatments and the effectiveness compared to similar drugs. So in summary, the process of testing a new drug on non-human is to look for the efficacy, the toxicity, what's called the pharmacokinetic informations. And these are usually conducted in various assays that are listed on the right. The in vitro assays are assays that are conducted in a lab, while the in vivo are the assays that are conducted in animal species like rats, mice, dog. The ex vivo are assays that uses animal cells, or they use multiple tissues or organs of a non-living animal. And the in silico assays are biological experiments that are computed via computer simulations. So for safety and toxicology, safety and efficacy are priceless to them. So let's shift gear and move to chemistry, manufacturing, and control. So chemistry, manufacturing, and control spans through the whole drug development process. And to ensure that a pharmaceutical product is safe, effective, and is consistent between batches, methods like manufacturing processes, product characteristics, and product testing must be properly defined. And these all together at what we call chemistry, manufacturing, and control. They all run parallel at each state of clinical development, preclinical, and their main activity stems from what's called the active pharmaceutical ingredient development, the drug product formulation, and the analytical method development. So what the CMC do is to think about how the API, the active pharmaceutical ingredients, how it can be scaled from those animal studies or those clinical phases, how it can be scaled to commercial market, how they could effectively characterize the product and develop a knowledge base for the active pharmaceutical ingredients. They also focus on the drug product formulation. And in that case, what they do is to focus on the shelf life limits, like when is the drug going to expire? There are specifications that needs to be established to determine that it is safe and efficacious. And if the process is transferred from one side to the other, how do you ensure that this product is still being effective? Those are some of the things they focus on. They are very big on quality by design. So which means in the manufacturing process, they do design quality into the process. It's not an afterthought. It's actually more like a pre-thought to them to think about quality when they're designing the manufacturing process, or when they're talking about the asset development or the analytical development, which involves analytical testing and validation. One other thing they do is they look at the stability, which involves the quality of drug over time. And anything that has to do with mostly manufacturing, it's CMC. And when it's all done and said, they kind of transfer their knowledge and some of the knowledge they've learned about the drug to commercial sector. The last one will be data science, and data science is an interdisciplinary field that uses scientific method. It uses programs and algorithms to extract knowledge and insight from structured or unstructured data. And this insight or the knowledge that it extracts is used in broad range of applications. So when we do mention data science, you could think of it as big data, machine learning, deep learning, data mining, and you will bring all these concepts of statistics, informatics, data analysis, analytical methods to understand and to actually analyze data. Some of the examples with respect to data science include developing a machine model or machine learning model to predict patient survival risk using what's called a biomarker data. Or you could also use what we call real-world evidence. Real-world evidence are data that are collected from either clinics or hospital. You could use that, and you could use that to predict, well, the patient survival risk also. You could build Shiny apps. If you ever use R, the software, the statistical software, you could build Shiny apps to visualize integrated clinical and translational science data. And you could automate report writing for routine statistical analysis. There's several things you could do with that. So with that, I conclude the overview of non-clinical statistics in the pharmaceutical or in the drug development process. And I'll shift gears to talking about non-clinical statisticians in the industry. So non-clinical statisticians in the industry work usually in what's called the non-clinical groups. Depending on the kind of company you're working for, you could be very small, between 1 to 5 statisticians, or you could be the medium size, 6 to 30 statisticians. Um, Most of the time, they work on early drug discovery or on development, or you could have a group that have both early drug discovery, preclinical studies, CMC, and even data science. Most of the time, they don't interact with regulatory agencies. FDA is the Food and Drug Administration. EMA is the regulatory agency that has to do with Europe. And in some cases, if they are understaffed, you have what's called the contract research organizations that actually support pharma. And these are like small research organizations that support some of these things I've described earlier. So what do we do in the industry? And what we do is to help make better decisions, help make informed business decisions, help guide scientific decisions, and also help provide quality products and services. And this also require us to be very competent in our technical ability. And some of the tools we use stems from multivariate analysis, Bayesian analysis, design of experiment. That one is a very big one. It also includes linear models, could be linear mixed effect models or not. Data science, power calculations, various components analysis. We are not just a statistician, we think and we aspire to be a drug developer. And that's why I've shown you all the process of the drug development process to see how this works and how statisticians can be very valuable in helping to make better decisions. So you can think of statisticians in the drug industries as decision scientists. So most of the time we work with various disciplines that are listed on the slides. But what we do with them is more of a collaboration. You collaborate with them, and most non-clinical statisticians actually work as independent consultants. But you do collaborate with people like engineers in the manufacturing process, or you do collaborate like pharmaceutical scientists or pharmacologists during the safety and toxicology process. You do collaborate with biologists and chemistry during the drug discovery process, and even veterinarians. One of the very important skill that is needed as a non-clinical statistician is to be able to communicate non-technical, to be able to communicate effectively with non-technical people. It is good that you're technically competent in your statistical tool, but you have to be able to communicate with people who are very intelligent and who are also competent in their field, but are not competent with statistical method. So communication is really key in this field. So if you ask the question, how do I prepare if I want to become a non-clinical statistician? Well, some of the things that you could do is to look at core courses that involves either linear, non-linear regression, or most likely mixed model or general linear models. You could look at courses that involve design of experiments or multivariate analysis or multivariate methods, which could include but not limited to principal components. And you could look for courses that include statistical process control as well. With respect to special topics, these are like topics like statistics, statistical genetics, image processing, machine learning, pharmaceutical scientists. Special topics could also be like a subject matter in biology or chemistry. And you also want to improve your computing skills. You could also learn about bioinformatics. A very good way to also prepare is to connect with industry veterans, which is one of the things you're doing right now, trying to learn more. And in this case, you could network with some of the industry veterans, send them an email, connect with them, ask them what they do. Another thing is to go to conferences, present there or attend, observe how they relate, what they present, what they talk about. The other way is to look for internships. Usually ASA have on their website, they do have a page for internships, or you could look at company website or job website. Or you could also look for, probably in your various academic colleges, you could look for consulting centers. Those are also good way to get internship or to get exposure to statistical consulting. The other one is if you're close to a farmer or any manufacturing site, look them up, see what they do, and see how you could either collaborate with them or learn a few things from them. Some of the resources which I believe a lot of the school libraries subscribe to, I know when I was in school, we have subscription to Springer. And these are some of the books, one of them being Non-Clinical Statistics for Pharmaceutical and Biotechnology Industry. That gives you a good summary about what I've just talked about. And so you could look at some of these resources, and if you have any questions about this, let me know. Then there are conferences and journal. One of the conference or the conference which we are representing is called the American Statistical Association Biopharmaceutical Section. The conference is called the Non-Clinical Biostatistics Conference, the NCB. There are other conferences like the Midwest Biopharmaceutical Statistics Workshop, or you could attend what we call scientific. Scientific just means the other disciplines that we interact with. You could attend their conferences too. Some of the journals, if you want to see a lot of recent work going on with respect to non-clinical statistics, will be Statistics in Biopharmaceutical Research, and that's a very good one. Or the Journal of Biopharmaceutical Statistics, that's also a very good one. So in bringing this to conclusion, I want to mention one of the very famous quote by one of the early data scientists and one of the great statisticians that ever lived, which is Edward Deming. And he said, without data, you're just another person without opinion. With data, we're decision scientists. And so I would hand it over to the panelists, which include Tom Bradstreet. He was the one that gave the introduction prior to this presentation. And there's also Jimin Sean. There's Fanny, there's Wei, and there's me, Oluyemi. So that concludes my presentation. And I think Fanny, which is the moderator, will take it from here.
Thank you, Olu, for the nice presentation. So how about we start to introduce ourselves a little bit? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Tom, would you like to go first or should I go first? I know. Okay, I will go first, I think. Okay, my name is Jimin Xiong, and I'm a director of the Manufacturing and Applied Statistics Department at the Janssen R&D, which is the pharmaceutical division of Johnson & Johnson. I joined the J&J in a long time ago, November 2004, and I mainly support the so-called CMC area that Oluyemi just mentioned in his slide, that called the chemistry, manufacturing, and control area. In those areas, it's include like the stability analysis for shelf life determination or for justification of specification. And also I support the solution study. It's analytical work anyway. And also the analytical method development, process validation, formulation study, or manufacturing and control issues, etc. So before I joined J&J, I was working at the IBM Storage Technology Division. That actually was my first job after I graduated from Rutgers. And I also work at the Sharing Cloud Research Institute as a research statistician. And Sharing Cloud now is part of the Merck. Okay. Yep. So that's about that. Yep.
Hey, thank you, Jermaine. My name's Tom Bradstreet. I've been currently at BMS for about 7 years. I work in the preclinical space. And in that space, I work with biologists, some chemists, some imaging folks, mostly on in vivo, but some in vitro studies as well. And my strategy for moving the science forward is to work with the scientists in a design to decision-making strategy of statistical methodologies and ideas. And a large portion of my effort has to do with bringing their stochastic intelligence and statistical literacy beyond where they currently are and where they were when they left school. And I've been most recently using Bayesian statistics to do that. And my goal for them in the frequentist world is that they should all be able to design studies and do analyses up through analysis of covariance and multiple linear regression, provided they have the software. But it's mostly about thinking about experimentation and making reasonable probability-based decisions. They are very appreciative of this, and once someone takes the time to point them in a reasonable direction, they really want to learn more, and that part's been very, very rewarding. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Tom. Olu, how about next?
So I'm Olivia Mariner. I just gave the presentation. I support the chemistry and manufacturing and control, and I've been doing that for the past 4+ years. And what I do is to support manufacturing, biotechnology, and regulatory groups. And all that I described in the pharmaceutical development process, that with respect to chemistry, manufacturing, and control, in both small and large molecules. And I did receive my PhD from Bowling Green State University in Ohio in 2016.
Thank you, Olu. Because one of our panelists, Weijia, has a conflict, and hopefully he will join us around 1 o'clock. So I'll help introduce him a little bit here. Weijia is Director of Data Science at Fate Therapeutics. Dr. Zhao publishes statistical methods extensively in statistical genetics and genomics, virtual screening, process monitoring, drug combination methodology. He also has working experience in phase 1 combination trial design, statistical methods in assay development, tech transfer, biomarker analysis, PK/PD modeling. Previously, Dr. Zhao worked as clinical and non-clinical statisticians at St. Jude Children's Research Hospital, AstraZeneca, and GSK after receiving his PhD from University of Florida in 2005. And I'm Fanny, and I'm a senior statistician in Oncology Statistical Innovation Group of AstraZeneca, the same group that Wei was in when he was at AstraZeneca. I joined AZ in July last year after previously working in the local biomedical research company. So I'm actually quite new to non-clinical statistics in pharmaceutical company, and I'm still in the learning process. My current responsibilities include statistical methodology and tool development, clinical trial design and analysis, and Bayesian analysis. I got my bachelor degree applied mathematics from Peking University and earned my PhD degree in statistics from the George Washington University. Lin Zhou, who is the co-host here, is actually my colleague, classmate, and friend. Thank you and other members from NIST so much for building the bridge between the NCB team and NIST and helping make this event happen. Thank you. And any questions from attendees so far? I didn't see any questions here. So how about we address the questions listed in the webinar introduction? What do you think, Jimmy? Like, how about we start to discuss about what are the challenges that are unique to biostatistician in non-clinical settings, and what types of opportunities are available, and how should one prepare to enter this field?
Okay, maybe I can start it as my experience in the so-called CMC area, chemistry, manufacturing, control area. There are, I think, in the CMC area, actually, during the filing, it's a pretty much a regulated area. There's a lot of regulation requirement. You can see from the ICH guidance, you know, Q1E, Q12, Q1E, Q2E, etc. Okay, I think up to Q12E. However, the challenge is actually to get the scientists, those engineers, to buy in the statistical methodology and approach can help them a lot. Okay, especially in the early stage of the pharmaceutical development. For example, during the process development area, in the earlier time, a lot of the scientists actually, they just did the so-called experiment by themselves. They get used to use the so-called one factor at a time design, or so-called all fact design, without considering all the other possible interaction between those factors there are studies. There's many times actually the scientists they did a so-called all fact experiment study, but they don't know how to analyze the data. If they don't see a clear separation from their study to make their own conclusion, and they don't know how to analyze data, so they will come to us and ask us how you can analyze data using statistical analysis. It's very difficult in that sense. So I did spend in the past, I spent quite a lot of time to educate them and discuss with them. The so-called all fact time is convenience, but it doesn't address your question. Yeah, and I encourage them to use the so-called statistical design, so you can consider all the factors at time that can address their question regarding the main factor or the possible interaction. That's just one example to get scientists to buy in and to provide them the education. Actually, in our department, we do provide a series of statistical training to the scientists, how to utilize the design of experiment to improve their process development or their method, analytical method development. Yeah. So to get the scientists buy-in, I think that's quite a challenge. And we still continue to work on that part. Yeah. That's my, okay, I think that's my feeling. Yeah.
Any additional comments from Tom and Olu?
I'll just add that in non-clinical statistics, much of that area is not regulated by the Food and Drug Administration nor a European agency. And so, although statistical design and analysis and decision-making are as or more important as they are in the clinical area, there's no regulation that says you need to be at the table for initial discussions. So in non-clinical, oftentimes we have a first assignment to ourselves of proving the worth of experimental design and decision-making. That's what Jiming was referring to. And you have to bring skills to the table where you can meet and greet the scientists, meet them halfway with their own language, and develop a very warm professional relationship, and then provide them with a series of poster children which shows successfully the value of what you have to bring to the table. And that requires a certain amount of patience and persistence in positioning their mindset. But once they feel the excitement about what statistical science can bring, then you have a very good problem. Is the line is so long you can't get to everyone. And so that's one thing that's different in non-clinical statistics. In clinical, the regulations say things have to be done a certain way, which implies the statisticians are a necessary factor. In the non-clinical area, it's actually a lot of fun. You have to earn being at the table and earn being an equal colleague. And once you've done that, there's a lot of rewards.
Thank you, Tom. Actually, we got a question from the Q&A session. He said, I'm wondering how image processing is related to the process explained by Olu. Could you please give an example here? So anyone wants to answer this question?
I'll give an overview. Image processing is a multi-level phenomenon. In the simplest sense, and by imaging, I assume we're talking about PET scans, fMRI, and so forth. Sometimes our involvement is at the level of we're provided with the scans and the results, and it's about experimental design. And other times it's really in the nuts and bolts of the imaging, determining where the edges of the image are regarding pixels and such. And I think I'll limit my answer to those two extremes. Oftentimes we're working in between.
Thank you, Tom. Any additional comments? No? Okay, have another question here. Are publications possible when working as a non-clinical statistician?
Okay, maybe I can chip in this for a little bit. Yes, it's possible, and it's actually the company we do encourage our fellow statisticians to publish, to get publication in all the different peer-reviewed journal. For example, for myself, I thought after I graduate, I thought, okay, my ability to write any paper probably just stopped there after my graduation. However, ever since I'm working at Johnson & Johnson, I do get many chances to get publication in some peer-reviewed journal. It's more toward to the pharmaceutical applications. For example, the Journal of the Biopharmaceutical Research, and also you can serve as a referee or the associate director in those peer-reviewed journal. As myself, I am the associate editor for the Journal of the Biopharmaceutical Research. Yeah, biopharmaceutical statistical research paper. Yeah, and so we do encourage our fellow statistician to get publication. Yeah.
Thank you. And here I want to share something more. Since I work in a statistical innovation group, there's a word innovation in our group name. So I'm really glad that we can have some time to do some research and to learn the approaches and to think about how to improve the existing statistical methods used in JAG study or non-JAG study. And I think it's really interesting to learn these techniques, and it's even more fun to apply them in real projects. And yes, we do. We can have a publication, and we also have opportunity to collaborate with experts in academia, which is really, really great. Thank you.
Just to add to that, depending on which area of non-clinical statistics you're working in, there are various opportunities to publish, and usually you might have to publish with your collaborators, or you might have to publish by yourself. And in some cases, what you publish is mostly the insights and the ideas that you've learned along the way. You might have to obtain permission to use data, but most of the time you could just recreate a dummy data, and that should be fine.
And I think it's important to point out that most of our publication work is driven by real world problems. We don't decide that we want to be an expert in area X and then publish 20 papers, because that's my personal interest. Generally, what we work on drives science forwards. And that's a little different than other areas in statistics that might be publishing.
Yeah. Let me see, there's no more question in the Q&A. So could any of you can describe the career path development in pharmaceutical company for non-statistical non-clinical statisticians?
So Fanny, you mean it's more like our experiences, right?
Yeah,
through
the
our
past
career
development.
development.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
yes. Okay. Let me go first again. How should I say? Okay. My first job, as I mentioned, out of the school was at the IBM Storage Technology Group as a staff engineer. Although it's staff engineer, it's just a title. But I am actually the only statistician in that whole department. The rest of my colleagues, they are all computer science. Okay, so I'm the only statistician within that group. But all the project that related to the experimental design or statistical process control or the data analysis, I think they all come from me. My decision or my proposals, and the computer science, they work with me to kind of design an application, particularly for different manufacturing process control. And I did teach statistical process control too during that period when I was working at IBM. At that earlier times, I was thinking, I just graduated from school. I should be able to learn a lot and quickly apply. I can apply my skill to different area, not just in the IBM or since I joined IBM. And but later on, because of the other family issues, so I start to look at a job in pharmaceutical company. And my first job actually is working at the sharing cloud as the research statistician. That's formally I start working at the pharmaceutical company as a statistician. Yeah. Then I think in earlier stage, I spent a lot of time to improve my skill, improve my knowledge, not just the statistical methodology, but also the knowledge about the pharmaceutical development. Like Tom just previously pointed out, it's very important and crucial to talk to scientists in their language, in their own language, not just statistical word. Because if you just talk in your own word language, the statistical language, many of time it will scare the scientists away or engineers away because they cannot understand clearly. And for that particular part, I did spend quite a lot of time have a meeting with scientists and learn what they're thinking about the question and what's their concern. And beside, okay, that's part of the so-called let's say a work, okay, that's job related work. We start learning, and beside that, I think besides job related work, the networking, just like Olivia pointed out, is very important. The networking with your fellow statistician in all different companies, they are very important. So I also start to participate or to volunteer in many different conferences as either the chair or organizing committee, where I learned a lot of different ideas and what people are thinking differently to approach the question and to solve the question and to help myself and my job getting better. Yeah. So I think that's about it. Yeah. Penny?
Yeah, thank you. Another question raised up in the Q&A. Do you have suggestions for early career statisticians, data scientists, of what types of projects to include in their portfolio to give a showcase that they have the skills needed to do the job?
I could start with that. So when you want to show that you have the skills needed to do the job, or you want to look for projects to include in your portfolio, well, computing skills are very important. So you have to showcase that you could compute in any of the statistical software. And today, I think R is the major statistical software that's being used. And some of the pharmaceutical industry still use SAS, and Python is gaining ground with respect to data scientists. Some of the projects you could do could include building a machine learning pipeline. If you could do that, then you understand how to pre-process data. You understand how to go from pre-processed data to model validation, and to even add future engineering. So if you could have something like that in your portfolio, it means that you do understand some of the concept of machine learning. If you're very curious about the kind of projects that include design of experiments will be good to have in your portfolio. Now, that being said, you probably are not working in pharma, so it might not be related to pharma, but as long as you have those skills, they are transferable. Projects that uses Bayesian analysis, you should have them in your portfolio. Projects that are focused on linear models or generalized linear models, whether it's mixed effect models, or even you could focus on nonlinear models as well. Those will give you better visibility in terms of skills that you need in the job.
Thank you, Lu. Tom,
I was just going to add that
okay.
when you arrive in a non-clinical industrial job, you should be assigned a mentor or find one that has more experience And you should have regular discussions about what interests you technically, where you think you want to head now and where you might want to go in the future. And you should build a plan within that organization's available offerings for intellectual stimulation and professional development, so that each day in concept, you're going to work learning something new and having fun doing it and contributing to decision making. So in most places, as a younger, brand new, freshly minted degree, PhD or master's, or with a few years of experience, you shouldn't be on your own. You should have guidance, and you should try to actively participate in that guidance as much as you can to drive your own future. And you'll find more experienced people very, very willing to help you do that.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Linjo, would you like to answer the question first, or we can start with another questions on the chat? Okay, there's another question here. What do companies look for when hiring non-clinical biostatisticians? Anyone want to answer this question? Or do
I'll start.
Okay.
Whether it's non-clinical or otherwise, and we'll get, the rest of us will get the specifics of non-clinical eventually in answering this. But the first thing I want to point out is we're looking for a match. The employer has needs in terms of skill sets, contributions, and so on. And an employee has expectations in terms of what they want to work on, how they want to contribute. And the biggest challenge is finding ideal matches. So often when companies advertise, there will be a job description, which hopefully is not generic, but somewhat details what the company is looking for a particular position. And you can decide if what you're looking for matches that description. That's not to discourage you not for pursuing that and getting an interview and finding out more in depth as to what they're looking for.
Yeah, I think I want to add a little bit something to what Tom just mentioned. It's very, very hard to find a perfect match in this world. From my past experience, especially in our group, when we try to hire a statistician that working in the manufacturing and applied statistic area. So I believe especially for those PhD students, we're looking at, I believe they have very strong background already through the school training as a PhD student. I believe a very strong statistical training, either theoretical or in the application area, in the applied area. Okay, but I think one of the key ingredient that we are looking for from those resumes or from those candidates, beside those that Tom just mentioned, I think we want to see whether the candidate is coachable or not. Yeah, and how can they learn? How can they work along with the fellow colleagues and the fellow statistician? How the individual can learn quickly? I think that's all the characteristic we were looking for. Yeah, besides just their technical skill. I think once you get a PhD degree, we believe you have the technical skill. Yeah, that's for sure. But whether you can learn and and you are coachable or not, or ability to learn quickly, that's different. It's all depends on different personality. Yeah. And that's kind of, and it's very hard to describe it, but that's one of the key characteristics we are looking for when we try to hire a new statistician. Yeah, that's my experience. Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions here? No. Okay. Yeah, maybe we can wrap up the meeting here. Jimmy, are you gonna advertise our upcoming events, and probably we can adapt this event after that?
Oh yeah. I think okay. There's one Q&A anyway. In the Q&A question,
really?
I see that.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's fine. It's asking, are there any opening at your institution now, and what are your expectations? Sorry, we don't have that now in Jensen or in my department. Yeah. But I think you probably, like Oluyemi just mentioned, if you search the Jensen SA website and the other link, you may be able to find something. Or if you want to register for the NCB conference and coming to the conference during the roundtable discussion, you may find something different, okay, or something else. So you can find there. Yeah. Before I go to conclusion, Oluyemi, you want to say something?
Oh, no, I wanted to talk that there is one more question. And just for you to know, Jamin hired me. So when you talked about what they look for, that's supposed to be something you take very serious.
Yeah. So Olivia is very good. He learned very quickly. That's all I want to say. And he has a desire to learn. And he also, not just within our team, but also across different functional area. And he has been doing very, very good job. Yeah, so far. Yeah. So having said that, yeah, I want to mention in the conclusion, I hope this webinar provide enough information or interesting to you. And we do encourage you to register for the NCB 2021 conferences and to submit a poster if you can. There's a poster competition, and the first place will have the $250 award, and the second place will be $150 award for the second place. And the registration fee for students is only $50. And I believe if you are affiliation to the NISS, and you should be able to reimburse that from the NISS. Yeah. So we do encourage you to attend that, because this is a very few meeting that purely focus on the non-clinical area. Okay, and if you are interested in the non-clinical application area, this is the right conference to go, and we do encourage you to register the conference. Okay.
Just to add to that,
yeah.
The conference is going to be virtual this year, so I hope you can take advantage of that to actually meet with industry non-clinical statisticians.
Yeah, thank you, Ninja, for posting the link for our conference. Yeah, unless there are any other questions, I want to thank everyone who has participated on today's call. Look forward to seeing you in NCB conference. Thanks, everyone. Have a good afternoon.